Probably most of us have little or no experience with ancient agricultural practices, but there are a few things that are common to both the new and the old. A sower is one who spreads seeds on a prepared field, usually a grain maybe or a grass type seed. Nowadays we use sophisticated machinery to accurately distribute the correct number of pounds of seed per acre in precise patterns, maybe even guided by GPS devices so they can precisely plant exactly where each seed is supposed to go. In Jesus' time, it was a little different. The sower would have a bag of seeds and he would dip his hands in and grab a handful and he would fling it out on the prepared soil. Some would fall on the path, or on the rocks, or on the untilled weeds and thorns at the edge of the field. An older, more experienced person who has done this for a long time might be able to minimize some of those losses and waste by avoiding the rock pile and the path and the thin soil and sowing right up to the edge of the field, but not getting it out into the weeds. So, if you were the one buying the seed and hiring the sower, you would want to hire an experienced so-and-so. Somebody got it today.
Gong.
At the 8 o'clock, it was met by silence in the entire church. Scripture is often referred to as the living Word. And many believe that that's because it remains as relevant today as it was 2,000 years ago. And that's true. Others believe it's because the same passages could have different messages for different people. And that's also true. And sometimes the same passage can have different meanings for the same purpose, for the same person, especially me, depending on the circumstances in my life. So if I had read this 2 years ago, I would have interpreted it differently than I am today. Which brings us to today's gospel. Jesus takes a long time to explain to his disciples about seed and the struggles with its germination and growth. Most often, we think of the sower as God and the seed as us, with the many obstacles that we face in attempting to bear fruit. This is a good, solid interpretation of this particular parable, but it's not the only one. Today, the circumstances in my life bring me to a little bit more complicated conclusions about what it might be. Today, to me, this story is about relationships. Relationships of sower and seed, and path, and rocks, and weeds, and soil. I can see myself in different parts of this parable. I can look at myself as seed and wonder why I so often seem to end up in the path, or in the weeds, or in the rocks, and not on the rich soil. See, we're all in one interpretation. We're all seeds, and we spread the gospel by our words and our deeds. But I wonder why, if God is the sower, how come he seemingly wastes his time by dropping me or us where we can't really seem to be fruitful? See, God is the author of all things, and if you think about it a little bit more carefully, you might want to think that maybe it's our failure to thrive is not necessarily to do with the way we are, but maybe our failure is what is needed so that when the next seed hits the same spot, it has something to work with and grow. I'm also sometimes the sower, not as God, but rather as disciple. I spread my words and my examples and my deeds that are hopefully the seeds of the gospel as I wander through God's fields. And my relationships, that is, where my seeds land, are with all kinds of people. Some cannot understand. They hear but don't listen, or they turn away. And some are too busy. But sometimes a word or an action might land on rich soil and be able to grow and bear some fruit. Remember, too, that relationships are multidimensional, and where my seed fails to thrive might be just the right soil for someone else's seed. Maybe another sower or disciple of the gospel will have the correct seeds to grow in the soil where I failed to grow. Here's another observation. In relationships with other people, sometimes not only am I the sower or the seed, but sometimes I'm the pile of rocks, or the path, or the thorns. Even occasionally I might even be rich soil. We cannot have a great relationship with everyone we meet, as much as we would like that to be. We cannot be fertile ground for everyone who falls into our lives. We're sometimes a stumbling block for others, just as they can be a stumbling block for us. Our human thoughts give ways to a certain understanding of order. In this particular time and place, the 21st century, we have a tendency as people to be digital thinkers. It's either 1 or 0 if you do that digital thing, or it could be black or white, or this or that, up or down, and those are the choices we get. So when we're sowing, we only plant grapes in a vineyard. We don't plant anything else there. And we only plant corn in cornfields and wheat in wheat fields. And we don't mix things up. It's one or the other. God, on the other hand, provides sowers with many seeds. And God rejoices in mixed crops. It's not either or. It can be both and, or many altogether. And it should be that way with us. So I'm going to ask you to broaden your horizons a little bit and think about that. The Lord will figure it all out at harvest time. So when it gets harvested and there's wheat mixed in with the rye and the oats, God can take care of that. Think about that a little. It's okay to be both the sower and the seed. It is our human nature, also the rock and the thorns and the path. We wouldn't be fully human if we weren't all of that and more. For although we cannot always see where the seed grows, where the seed goes, or whether it's sprouting or fruiting, God can make us all fruitful in the world, even if we don't see it. God fertilizes it and waters it, and it becomes bread for those who eat, and it does not return to him void. It achieves the end for which it was sent, with or without our help. And so here's a challenge and a thought for you for this week. We are multidimensional people. As you look at your relationships this week, try to decide whether you're a seed or sower or rock or thorn or fertile ground.